Welcome back, Idiot Squared viewers. Today we have a mind-bending, mind-melting episode. We will be discussing the universe, multi-way systems, hypergraph rewriting, the Wolfram Physics Project, Jonathan Garrard and his views on observers. And is time even real, or do we construct it as observers? I have no idea. We're going to dive deep into this, so stay tuned and enjoy. Garrard does he does a fantastic job of going over all of these things, and it's insane because what he really has illuminated to me, and they're still developing, is like a completely different way to think about things. And I think it adds a lot of richness, but it also challenges our typical assumptions. So essentially what he says, and we've spoken about this before about the Roolead, right? So he says that the Roolead, one way to define the Roolead is this infinity groupoid. Do you remember that word from the talk?
Yeah, I remember the word, but I couldn't really say what it means.
The simplest way to really think about an infinity groupoid is it's like, say you have some points, right? Like just, random points. And then you can take a path from one point to another. So like in our hypergraph system, or multi-ways or whatever, you have nodes and you have edges. So nodes are points and edges are the connections between them, right? So we could think of that as a path, okay? So it's just like really, really simple in that regard. You have points and then between them you have paths, right? So you take all the different paths that you can to that point, and then it says, well, let's go a level of abstraction above that. So now let's abstract out. And so let's say that the paths between points, right? So the paths are now points. And then between those points, let's draw more paths. That kind of makes sense?
Just making it more complex?
Yeah, essentially. And then you can keep doing this. You can keep abstracting. So whenever your paths, like you get paths, you can then take those paths, turn them into points, and then make more paths between those points. And if you do this into the limit, the infinite limit, right, you end up with this thing called an infinity groupoid.
Okay.
And this is this Alexander Grothendieck. He's did a lot of the mathematics on this, and essentially he had this hypothesis. Well, he has this hypothesis that when you do that and you take it to this limit, every structure below it, so all of those lower levels, inherit what's called spatiality from this object, this infinity groupoid, right? And so it's a way of getting spatiality, like we experience space and time, right? And it's always been a mystery, like how does space arise? And this construction sort of shows a way that can happen, right? Which is, it's mind blowing, but it gives one a different way to think about things, and it provides a richness when you really start to try and understand this that I think is beautiful and powerful. So does that concept kind of make sense? Like, we've looked at these graphs before. You have the nodes and the edges, and then it's just that it's an abstraction. So every time you end up with paths, you turn them into points, and then you create paths between those points. So think of it like it's like a cross-hatching, a weaving, a continuous, like this, just like this infinite wovenness. And I don't know, it's kind of interesting. In my mind, I can sort of see how that would end up creating spatiality.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's really difficult for me to grasp this at the moment, but I think if as we go on, I'll begin to understand this a little bit more. But basically, the hypothesis is that everything is computational. Everything in life is computational, and everything is sort of forever expanding until it gets to like one small point again, and then it begins to expand again. So it's like a fluid sort of process that's happening, like a cycle, like recycling itself over and over again. That's why our concept of time, where we think of time as linear, it's not essentially linear, but it's sort of circular. No, maybe that's not the right word.
Well, according to Garrard, time doesn't fundamentally exist. Time is something that we construct. It's an artifact
Yeah.
of us being observers. Do we want to get into that just a little bit?
All right. Let's watch it, guy.
Okay. So,
So we've developed time. It's a human, it's because it's based on observers, right? So humans being the observers. So we basically constructed this concept of time that doesn't actually exist, but we think it does because we live and die. So we kind of see our own lives on this sort of timeline.
sort of. I think it's slightly different, maybe more profound. It's like everything that can happen is, or everything that can be is, right? And it's just that. And then we sort of partition causal processes into sequences. So like,
yeah, I guess we are doing that day to day. Like we do live structured lifestyles and we structure things and we do one thing before the other. And we have like these sort of rules in place where you can't put your shoes on at the same time as your socks. To us, it's impossible, right? So I guess we do live our lives in this sort of order. And that's why we sort of view time as sort of linear, because one thing goes on to the next, you know?
yeah. Yeah. So he says that our notion of time emerges from sequencing causally independent sets. And we have flexibility on how we do those slicings. So us as humans will slice in certain ways, and me as a human, and you as a human we'll slice differently because we're two different people. We're at different places in space. And then like AI and aliens could possibly or plausibly slice causality in systematically different ways. So he uses this terminology. He says that the universe is a partial order, and us as observers, we take that partial order and turn it into total orders. All right. Now, I'm probably sure that doesn't make much sense to many people. Does that make any sense to you whatsoever?
Okay, so our world, our universe is partially ordered, that there are a sequence of events that have occurred to get us to this point. But us, the observers, humans, we are now taking a partially ordered concept and making it much more ordered, right? I'm kind of not explaining the partially ordered part, though. I'm missing that point, but
I'll get a bit for you. So a partial order represents a situation where there is only a partial / incomplete ordering or sequencing between elements. For example, tasks that have dependencies on other preceding tasks, but not every task depends on every other task. All right. So there is a partial order based on these dependencies, but no definite full sequence. So he uses causal relationships as an example of a partial order. So some events causally precede others, but not in a total linear sequence.
okay. Biology is sort of that way, right? Like evolution.
Yeah. So I'll give you a good example. For a partial order, imagine you're looking at a family tree that traces the lineages between like ancestors and descendants, or parents and children. Okay. Got that? The tree will show who came before who, right? Like in that lineage.
Yeah.
Yep. But not all the individuals are in a direct and like ancestral dependent relationship. Some family members are only indirectly related through a common ancestor. Does that make sense? So like you have a path from, your mum's mum to your mum to you, but your mum's mum might have had other children
Yeah.
that are
I understand.
off.
Yeah.
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 So the family tree imposes a partial order. Certain individuals have a defined ordering, but not a complete sequencing of every member. It's ordered, but not totally ordered. So that's a partial order, right?
Right. If we look at the family tree as a whole, but if we separated like one lineage, then it would be perfectly ordered.
Yeah. So that's the partial order is when you look at it all. Okay.
Okay.
So then same thing. Now imagine those family tree, but if you entered it in chronological, right, or listed by birth date, this would impose a total sequencing, right? So if you look through chronologically, there would be a total order in that because it would show this person came before this person, right? So that imposes a total sequencing or sort of total order. Each person is fully ordered with respect to every other person. So while the family tree only relates certain individuals, the chronological list creates a complete linear sequence of all individuals. No one is left out of the defined order.
So why is the claim that human observers view everything as total order? I don't think we do.
So the universe is a partial order.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There isn't just like one sequence of events. Like the family tree, the universe has this branching property. Does that make sense? So the family tree is a partial order. Our universe is a partial order. Okay. So then observers take the partial causal order and effectively convert it into a total order by slicing events into sequential anti-chains. Okay. So another crazy word. But what that really means is we take the partial order and turn it into a total order. So we find ways of ordering things. So we say, oh, this thing happened, then that thing happened, then this thing happened. And that's our total order.
Okay. I guess I was kind of thinking of how the human mind works and sort of like thinking, like thoughts, right? Because we have the capability of thinking in partial orders. It's sort of, that's how we get to understand one another. Like me putting myself in your shoes, for example, could be an example of that. I think like if I can, understand your past, your reality, the way you perceive things, I can understand you, right? So that's me sort of taking me out in my total order state that I might be normally in to try and understand the way that you carry yourself to get to understand you. So I'm putting myself in this partial ordered state of mind, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we might have gone down a different track with it. So think about just like super basic, like when you see something happen, right? You're taking a series of photons are hitting your eyes. Okay, auditory waves are going into your ear. Okay. And they're signals, right? And your brain is processing those signals. And so there's all this information coming in, okay? And the speed of light's really fast, and our brains, relative to the speed of light, process pretty slowly, okay? So it's got to take each of these sort of bits of information, and then we're saying that these things are happening simultaneously. These different things are happening simultaneously, okay? So we're taking a series of inputs that could have been happening at different times, whatever. We're saying, oh, these are all occurring at the same time. Right? And that's us taking like that partial order and applying an order to it. We're creating a total order out of it. And that is our perception.
Okay. All right. I got you.
So there's all of these things out there, and we're sort of, we're going through and defining a way of slicing it or a way of viewing it that creates a total order.
Is it possible for us to perceive things in an impartial order then? Or we're sort of, what's the word? We're unable to because our brain sort of works in a total order way, which doesn't allow
That's
us.
a good question.
Because I would like to think that we could. I'd like to think that we have that ability. Because if we did, I feel like that could be like a step towards enlightenment.
Well, yeah, it's interesting you say that. I'd never really thought about that, but I think that that's also true. Like, yes, we do rely on, taking partial order and turning it into a total order. But at the same time, we can still appreciate that there is a partial order. Like, we're talking about partial orders. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's actually a mad good question. In order to perceive things, do we have to make a total order? But then also knowing that, can we perceive partial orders? Well, we do perceive a partial order, but maybe we have to create these total orders to be able to register it as some sort of perception. But can we still perceive partial orders, or are we always having to, in order to perceive something, do we always have to impose a total order? That's a mad good question.
What's occurring during a chess game, for example? Like you're looking at the board, right? And you're making all these calculated moves. You're saying, okay, if I do this and I can do this and I can do this, but I also have this route and I also have this route. So you're looking at the entire board and you're sort of planning, taking your time, assessing all of the different moves that you could do. And you're thinking, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead. Isn't that sort of placing yourself in this sort of impartial, ordered mind state where you can sort of, calculate all the moving parts all simultaneously?
Yeah. But I think what you are asking is, that's being able to like think through different possibilities, explore different things, right? So that's exploring partial orders and exploring total orders within that. But this is more this is
true.
Like, we think that definite things happen. That's the total order, right? We're applying this ordering to it. Whereas I think it's more like a deeper thing that's being said with the partial order is just like, there's so many different ways that could be perceived based on how you decide to order it, if that makes sense. So it's like we live in this infinitely sort of I don't know if the word's complex, infinitely entangled object, and how you look at it kind of defines what you see. But I get where you were going, but I think we skipped a couple steps up. But like this is more at like at the base level, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, because when I look at the color blue, I know that it's blue because you as well have told me that it's blue. And growing up, people, that's blue. So we commonly perceive as this color as blue. We're all in agreement that it's blue, so therefore it's blue, right? So that's a very ordered sort of way of
collective hallucination,
or a collective hallucination. Yeah.
But it's a useful way of ordering things too, for us.
Right. It makes life more convenient, and it makes things, it just makes things more convenient. If we can all agree that this is blue, right?
Yeah.
And we all understand what that is. And it's basically just because we agree on it. It's a hallucination that we have that we all agree on. Therefore, it has backing. It has merit. I think that was the word I was looking for. Merit. We give it merit because we have decided that this is blue, and we've all agreed on that.
Yeah. So it's sort of saying that like reality is, what you perceive reality to be is based on who you are or what you are as an observer. Different observers will perceive reality to be very different. Like you think about, its perception of reality will be very different to our perception of reality, largely because of the scale that it exists at. right? We perceive reality to be the way we perceive it to be because of the scale that we exist at, the way we are as observers, the time where, well, this is the crazy thing about time. I don't know if that's a good statement to make, but like, where we are in space at the moment, and society and culture, those different things will change how you perceive things. I have another example with this partial order, total order. And it's back to that getting dressed example. Okay. So if we think about getting dressed, right, there is a partial order to the steps. Some things have to come before others, right? So for example, you have to put your underwear on before your pants and your socks on before your shoes, like we discussed. But there is flexibility too. So you could put your shirt on before or after your pants, for instance, right? Like it doesn't matter what order you put them on. You could put your shirt on first, then your pants, or you could put your pants on first, or then your shirt. Doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you end up getting dressed. Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
So there is a partial order dictated by certain dependencies, but no rigid total sequence to the entire process. The ordering is incomplete. Okay. So that's a partial order. And then a total order. Now if you imagine those dressing steps, but instead they're performed on like an assembly line, so that each station completes one step. So it's like socks, then shoes, undies, then pants, then singlet, then shirt. Okay. So the assembly line imposes a total ordering on the previously partially ordered steps. So now there is only one strict sequence that the steps can occur in. So no flexibility remains. Each item must be added in a completely defined order. The full dressing process is totally ordered. So what I'm sort of like, when I think about this, what I'm getting like is, imagine if the universe was a total order, imagine how boring it would be. There'd only be one way, right? It would be imposed upon you what you saw. Whereas the beautiful thing about our universe is that it's a partial order. So there's room to pick and choose how you choose to see and define things, which is why, good or bad doesn't, necessarily exist. It's a construct made up by us based on our beliefs.
Guy, we need to remind the world leaders of that, guy, because they keep trying to put us in total order, but in
Correct.
partial order, it's much more beautiful. God damn. Tell these communist countries like Canada, Australia.
Yeah.
Who else is going down that?
China.
Well, yeah, well, China's been there for
most of the Western countries nowadays are flipping over. It's crazy.
I know.
Anyway,
it's crazy.
Yeah. So, if I just summarize this last little bit, right? So I thought that's a pretty good. That helped me. That example. So, in Garard's view, like the way he talks about it, the underlying causal fabric of reality is a partial order. Some events precede others based on direct causal relationships, but there is no overarching linear sequence. Observers like us take this partial causal order and effectively convert it into a total order by slicing events into these sequential antichains. So this is analogous to taking a family tree, partial order of ancestry, and making a chronological list of individuals, a total temporal order. Okay, so by imposing a chronological list, right, we then see that total order. The observer's act of sequencing those antichains turns the partial causal order into a totally ordered progression of events, i.e. time, right? That's what we perceive to be time. It's like this, then that, then this, then that. So different observers may slice up the underlying causality into different total orders based on their perspectives and cognition, what we just sort of went over. So the total order of time emerges from the observer imposing sequencing on the intrinsically partially ordered causal fabric. Time results from the observer, not fundamental reality, which I still find incredibly hard to wrap my head around. So, like in summary, like essentially what that's saying is observers manufacture time by converting the partial causal order of events into a total temporal order via sequential slicing.
Right. what would happen, do you think, if we began to see time, for what Wolfram and what's his name? Not Gordon.
Jonathan Gorard.
Garad are suggesting, because if we began to see, time as non-existent, not in this like linear way, like what would happen to our brains? Like would we just go crazy? Would we not be able to, I guess any sort of switch would make us kind of go crazy. Sorry, I'm not really making any sense. Have you seen the movie Contact? Because the aliens, when I think it was called Contact. The aliens don't have the same concept of time as we do. I think
Or was
that's
it
what was
Arrival?
explained.
Was it Contact or Arrival? But they had the
Maybe it
different
was
language?
Yeah, exactly. So they would see sort of time. Their concept of time was different. So that means that they wouldn't be viewing the world in this total ordered way that we are. They would be viewing it in this sort of impartial order, because if they weren't, then they would be seeing time in the same way that we do. So what is going on in their brains? Like what is going on in their heads to, like is it complete chaos then? Because if there's no order, that means chaos. I don't know. Like what would?
But no order and partial order aren't the same thing. So there is a partial order,
right
in the universe, but we impose a total order onto it because of the way we are as well. So what I think, the answer is I don't fucking know, right? what I can think through is the following: is in order to say, sort of like we like to say definitive things. Do you know what I mean? Like we think that definite things happen, and that's a consequence of us taking this partial order and turning it into a total order. Okay, but it isn't. It's a partial order. But like all we can do as observers is make total orders to say something, to have perceptions, to have this. Like you, Holsker, think that you have a history. Okay, you remember your history, right? You have one thread of history. Yeah, which that's an artifact or a consequence of doing these total orders, thinking that these things follow definite sequences. When what it appears like the true reality is that isn't exactly the case. So if you did like perceive the partial orders as opposed to total orders, I don't think you could say that same thing. Like you wouldn't have a coherent experience. You wouldn't have an identity. You would just be, you wouldn't be able to have a coherent thread of experience.
Right.
So it's sort of like we're taking all of this branchingness and forming it into one sequence, when in reality it is all this branching stuff.
Right.
And so what allows you to have your own identity and have your history and experience and personality and everything is this sort of total ordering, like creating this sequential sort of set of events, chain, time, et cetera, et cetera.
It's crazy how like constructed the human brain is, like how linear it is. If you really start breaking
constructive it is, like how much construction it actually does, right? Like when we're making observations, we're also constructing those observations, right? Like we take inputs and then we construct and we hallucinate an idea of what that is.
Okay. All right. I think I got this concept, guy.
I have one more good example of with the partial order and total order, just to like really nail it. So we discussed how a partial order is only a partial or incomplete ordering of sequencing between elements. Okay, so tasks that have dependencies on other preceding tasks, but not every task depends on every other task. Okay, so there is a partial order based on these dependencies, but no definite full sequence. Okay. So some events causally precede others, but not in a total linear sequence. Okay. So a total order means elements are arranged in a complete, definite sequence. So if you have a book, right, by numbering the pages in the book, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc., that creates a total order sequence. So Gerard in these lectures suggests time itself, has the nature of a total order. It imposes a complete sequencing on events. Whereas causality itself is only a partial order. Time slices events into a fully ordered progression. So just to summarize, partial orders have only limited or partial sequencing, while total orders have a complete, definite sequence of elements. Gerard relates these concepts to causality and time, respectively. So time, to have a notion or experience of time, it implies that it puts a total order, like it puts an ordering in things. Fucking feel like I've just confused myself again.
I think I know what you're saying, because time only exists in a total order concept. Right? It can't
you can
exist.
Only say it. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's correct.
Yeah, because humans, because we constructed time, because like I feel like I've said this like a couple of times now, but it's just like it is a difficult concept to comprehend for me personally, but it's because it's pretty heavy, guys, but it's super interesting. In order for us to have these experiences and these memories and this identity that we have, we need for life to be ordered. We need our brains to perceive things in an order, and time is just part of that, because time is a linear thing that's moving forward. 1 second goes to the next second, to the minute, and days and months and years and everything. So look at history, right? We date things. This happened, and then this happened, and this happened. So life is very much so perceived in this ordered magnitude of events, and our lives as well, and memories that we share with people. Everything has this order. So it's the only way where we can sort of exist and perceive that we are existing, somehow have this proof. Because I could tell you, remember when we went to Thailand, for example, right? We know the day, we have these memories. So that's sort of like proof that we exist and that we went to Thailand, because we both agreed on this perceived notion of time and this sort of order of events that occurred. And that's sort of our existence.
I think that's actually pretty good. It's like, it is by applying these orderings to things that aren't inherently totally ordered, we then end up with this chronological view.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, the crazy thing to try and wrap your head around is like, the universe isn't inherently like that.
That's the crazy thing, right?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but we perceive
I still don't fucking know how to think of that.
Well, like the universe is forever expanding, right? It's just expanding until it comes to a point, I guess, and then it continues expanding again. So,
or everything just is. It's so trippy, right? Like it's super mind melting.
It was very hard to take ourselves out of the equation to sort of understand it, because we're trying to understand it based on factors that we know. So that's why, because even if I say the universe is forever expanding, right? I'm still going to think of that occurring in sort of this linear ordered way, right? Because continual expansion is ordered. Like it's going one way until it collapses in on itself. That's still like a linear sort of concept, isn't it? Yeah.
No, I don't. Yeah. Do you see how time is baked into all of these things?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We,
So how hard it is to separate that from our, like, are we able to, like, it's just like, uh, yeah, I agree. Like, look, I agree with you, but I don't know if that's if it's true. I don't know if that's right. I don't know if, you know what I mean? Like, if the universe is this partial order, and then, us making total orders out of that partial order is the time thing. How can you, I don't even know how to think of something without time. You know what I mean? Like, I can understand, like, one step and then the next step, or, the process of different computations is time, right? I used to be able to wrap my head around that, but now, like, that there is no such thing as time. It's just an observer construct, or it's an emergent thing based on observers. I don't know how to think of any, you know what I mean? Like, the only way I can think about it, like, the only plausible explanation I can come up with is that everything that can be just is. And then us moving through that creates time, or I don't know. Like, to me, it seems like you need time to go through things. I don't know if this makes any sense.
I wish we could put ourselves in the shoes of, like, let's say, an alien that views things in an impartial, ordered manner. Because if you could view things but then
But I
maybe
don't
they
know if there
wouldn't
would be an
understand.
experience. But I don't know if there would be an experience
Right,
there. Like, if
right.
is it, do you know what I mean? Like, in order to have
Yeah.
experience, you sort of have to see it this way.
So is consciousness bound to ordered total order?
Yeah. Short, I don't know, but it seems as if it's like, if you were to just, Wolfram says this, actually, which is an interesting point. He thinks that consciousness is a step down from
Oh, yeah.
the universe, so to
Okay.
speak, right? Like, in order
Yeah.
to experience or something, you have to sort of, you have to step down and like, you can't just experience the universe. In order to have consciousness, you have to sort of constrain yourself to experiencing the universe in this specific way. But I think that
Okay.
if you, like what you were saying before, if you were experiencing it across the total thing, I don't think that you would have a coherent ability to comprehend your experience.
Okay. If you are viewing time as not a linear thing, like those aliens in that movie Arrival, like they see time as like there's no beginning and end. It's just like time just sort of is. Or do you remember how they explained it? Time was like in a circle, or
They had a different
do you remember
language.
that part?
Yeah. And so, weirdest thing is Wolfram freaking helped with that movie, and
Really?
helped to come up with that language, that idea of that language way back in the day. How
No
freaky is
way.
that? Yeah.
That's crazy. Okay, so do those aliens have consciousness? If their concept of time is not total order like we are, does that mean their consciousness is also partially or ordered? Like
I have no fucking idea. Like, I got no fucking idea,
because
dude.
because consciousness might be bound by this total order, right? Or maybe there's levels to it. Maybe those aliens are in a different type of consciousness because they're not completely. There's some order. There's partial order because the universe is partially ordered, and to not view time in a linear manner, does that mean you as well have to have an impartial or a partial ordered concept of consciousness or brain?
I think you just made a great point about different levels, like at different scales. So if you the bigger the scale, right, the more the lower level scales would look partially ordered. And so, like, if there was an alien civilization that existed at a scale significantly greater than us, then they would probably perceive us or whatever's happening on our planet as a partial order, not a total order.
Oh, okay.
Or actually, maybe I have that wrong fucking way around.
Because like we're having a hard time trying to understand what it would be like to view things in an impartial or in a partial ordered manner. So if you were sort of on a different scale or a different level, like an alien race who views things in a partial ordered manner, you would have a very difficult time understanding what is a total order manner, what that would look like. You know, we'd be trying to explain to them like, no, like time is linear for us. They'd be like, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I have no idea. This is melting my mind. Like legit. I don't know. Okay, maybe I think I might have got that wrong. I might have got that upside down. Maybe the higher the scale you live at, the more you see the things below you as total orders, and then the things above you as partial orders. I don't know.
Oh yeah, maybe we could
partial order is kind of like.
your...
Sorry, you go.
No, it's all right. It's all right.
So like a partial order is like there is some uncertainty, and then the total order is you're imposing some sort of certainty on the uncertainty. Whereas like the more you know, the more you advance, the bigger your extent is.
I was trying to think of like a real example on our planet of what we perceive as much more ordered than we perceive ourselves. And I was thinking maybe ants. Like look at the life cycle of an ant. An ant, there's like couple different ants. Sorry, different types of ants, right? There's like the soldier ant and the worker ant, and then the queen. And they all have strictly designated roles, which they do their entire lives, and that's all that they do. And they have a very distinct way of communicating, right? They communicate through movements, I think, through smells, but everything they do is very, very ordered from the time that they're created to the time that they die. And they're all living in this like succinct community with very distinct roles. So that to me is like complete total order. So when we view ants, we see, wow, that's much more total order than humans, right? Because we have this concept of freedom where we can choose what job we want. We could choose, who we want to marry. We can even choose like, how many kids we'd like to have. So we have choices. So to ants, we're living maybe this sort of partially ordered life, whereas really we're I mean, based on the hypothesis of Girard, our brain works in a very ordered manner, right? So there's like these levels. Fuck, I kind of fucked up at the end there, but I think you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, see, like, oh, yeah, you went for a whole bunch of these different things, but I think you actually said something that was pretty, like, actually interesting and decent. Like, so to us, we look at the ants and we think it's totally ordered. To them, maybe they perceive like they've got choices, they're doing all this other stuff, but like from a high level, we can see that, no, they're sort of constrained to this way of being, right?
Yeah.
And then, so to us, we perceive that we've got like all this autonomy. We've got all these different, I can choose to have kids, or I can choose to do this, or I can choose to do that. But if we zoomed out again and we're able to look at ourselves from this higher level perspective, like, imagine we're the ants now, and there's some observer like us that's above us. And they would just be like, right. Oh no, these people are just born into their roles.
Right. Yeah.
They're just
exactly,
going to do this.
Exactly.
They're just going to do that. And yes, there's all these different options that they can do, but at the end of the day, it's going to end this way. it's got a
Right.
limit to this thing.
Exactly. So then in that case, total order and partial order are, again, concepts that we've created. They're not real then. And we're basing it out on our own personal experiences.
Yes, we have created these, or we've used these concepts. I don't know if they're just us creating them, or if it is an act. Like, it seems to be. Well, yeah, no, you're right. They are created. They're a way of describing stuff.
Yeah, I guess what I said doesn't really matter.
No. What you said is right. Like, you're right. These are constructs, things that we've come up with. But like, it appears that is a useful way of a useful description for the universe.
I'm glad we got into this point, Guy, where our brains are melting. This is why we started the podcast, Guy. This is why we got into this.
To get us more to this challenging point, stuff. So I think it's probably not going to be as appealing to many people, but like, I genuinely enjoy going over this kind of thing. And yeah, like, trying to condense it all down into like an hour or something like that is tough. And so it means, we might not be able to do justice to many things, but I feel like we developed or deepened our understanding of some concepts. And like, again, thinking like that the universe is this partial order, like that there isn't this linear sequence of one thing to another thing, whatever. There's all these different ways, right? And then us as observers pick that and apply these orderings, which gives us our perception and our idea of time, and things having to follow this ordered sequence is fascinating, and it challenges the way you think about things and the way you perceive reality or you observe. And I just think it's fucking cool that we can do that. You know what I mean? Like,
100%.
You could actually do this as an observer, as a person that has a conscious experience, as a Polska or as a Rube, like, as us, we can try to better understand why we would perceive things the way we perceive them, or what is this thing that we're actually perceiving? What is life? What is the universe? What is this, like, infinitely complex fucking thing? And at the end, and so one of the crazy things you come to is it's kind of like, it is what you make of it to a degree. There is some freedom there to choose how you choose to make your total orders out of this partial order. And so maybe we should, like, one thing I take away from this is like, I just want to make better total orders.
I'm just trying to think of how we can, moving forward, how can we continue this? Like, are we going to have a continuation?
Yeah, I feel like we should. But we can break it up into these different sections. The craziest thing is that they all sort of tie back into each other.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Yeah, because people don't really like part one and part two. So
yeah, this would just be like an evolve. Like, so we can do a thing on observers, right? So, what's a good? So, one interesting thing about this is the laws of physics that we observe, whatever, arise because of the kinds of observers that we are. So it means that, like, different observers would experience different laws of physics. That's fucking crazy. Like, because we think that, you know what I mean? So we could do a whole thing on that. Like continuity and persistence, like having an identity is like this continuity of character.
Oh, that would be a cool pod, dude. That would be a cool pod.
So there's so many things we can do, but it's just becoming familiar with the terms and the way of thinking about things from the Wolfram model, right? And so I thought this is like a decent way to sort of go over a bit of that. I don't think we did as good as we could have. Like, this is something that's it's very difficult. Like, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. Like, I don't fully grok or understand all of these things yet. But going through this helps me to identify where I'm lacking, because it's easy to convince myself that, or trick myself that I know better. But when I'm trying to explain it to somebody else and you're like, I don't know, that highlights to me that I've got to deepen my understanding in certain areas.
So I sent you a message, next pod, identity. So we can sort of, think about how we can elaborate on that a little bit for next week. I was just thinking that we could use some of the concepts which you were mentioning and sort of try and look at identity through those concepts. Try and explain like what is identity with those concepts for next week.
So I think we can use this, which is what you're saying. We can use this as a lens to look at many things. And I think that's what's cool about it, is it gives us this really cool lens and this way of talking about it that's, to me, very unique, but also very illuminating. And it shows things that if you weren't looking at it this way, you otherwise wouldn't see.
All right. Dope.
But yeah, so I feel like we wrap it there before we both have fucking aneurysms.
Yeah, I think so. This should just be like a continuational thing. We'll because we mentioned a lot of concepts at the beginning of the pod, which we didn't get a chance to get to, but I think that we will get to them in the following pods, and we'll try to incorporate, like for example, the next one, if we do identity, we'll try apply some of the concepts that we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast to identity and sort of observing or trying to identify what identity is.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we use this as a way of, use this lens as a way of coming up with these total orders, like ways of explaining or trying to understand stuff. And yeah, deepening our understanding together and making it fun along the way too. So yeah, I'm down for that. I think it's a good idea.
Hell yeah.
All right, guy, we'll wrap it. That's a pod. Thank you very much for staying with us, everybody. It's pretty tough to follow along with. I understand it was hard to follow along, and I was doing them fucking talking. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Oscar, thank you very much for your thoughtful questions and input.
All right, bro. I'll see you next week then. Love you, dude.
Peace.
All right, peace.